Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Season 7, Episode 10, A Royal Problem. The worst episode. No, I can't do it. This is assuredly unintentional. I've covered television enough at this point in my life to be able to identify patterns in how episodes are constructed and how they're written and blah, 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 blah. But what tends to happen a lot is there's a situation where there's an episode, then there's another episode, and by total coincidence, they happen to have a lot to do with each other, and they're kind of mere reflections of each other, and they have this similar ideas and concepts. It's just one of them does them well, and one of them does them poorly. This happens constantly in television, not just exclusive to MLP. Yes, what's her face? I wrote down her name when I bring it up, which is much later in the episode. Definitely does a good job with this, and it's right here. Nicole Oliver. So, I think we can all agree that this episode is worse than an Honest Apple in basically every way. Honest Apple actually had the right message, the Aesop, and it approved it. It did it in such a better execution, I think, is really the thing. The presentation was relevant as well. Whereas this episode, I mean, it's Starlight, and who cares about Starlight? And for some reason, Luna's on the screen. I don't even know what's up with that. Thank you, Ogre. Although, I'm not sure if that's a real one. So, I don't know what to do about that one. But in case it is a real one, thank you regardless. And if it's not a real one, then thank you regardless. I'm just going to go ahead and put that towards Empire of Sin, because I imagine that is going to be your choice. Twilight's face at the very beginning of the episode. Oh, I love the animation. Of course, this episode starts on a whammy. Starlight is being called by the map. Now, we've already talked about the map extensively. We have actually spent, I think at this point, hours discussing the map across various episodes. So I'm not going to dive down that rabbit hole again. But I'm going to say this is a huge game changer for two reasons. Number one, it only sends one pony, which has never happened before. First of all, this indicates it's getting more specific with its solutions. And, by logical discourse, implies that the types of problems it's dealing with are more complex. Let me try to explain that a little bit. It feels like, this is presumption, and again, I haven't seen Season 8 or 9, but it feels like what's happening is the map started off with the lower level difficulties, right? Like it started with the easier friendship problems. And now, and over time, it's been getting more complex, dealing with more difficult solutions, difficult situations that require more complex solutions. And as it's doing so, I hate to say this makes perfect sense. Real life is complicated. Even a fictional world, at least one that's well written, is complicated. And so, fixing the easy stuff. Let me go into something a little bit polemic for a second, okay? Let's imagine for a moment that I have the powers of the Q. All of it. I can just do anything. Now, what do? Well, the first thing I do is I fix the easy stuff. The stuff that takes no real brain power to fix. Restoring aspects of the atmosphere, rejuvenating the soil, preventing desertification, all that stuff that is just duh, right? The easy stuff first. Over time, I would have to escalate and get to the point where I would have to start questioning, okay, what do I do about plumbing? How do I deal with the distribution of food goods under these circumstances from these particular countries to these other countries, and the nature of the preservation of those foods? How do I address the legal system in this country or this country or this country, and how it's being applied? How and you get my point. Again, I'm going to try and stay away from actual polemic territory, but as you develop replicators, see, that is a terrible idea. That was an AJ solution from the previous episode. A simple solution to a complex problem. And this is exactly my point. It feels like the map is slowly getting to the point where it's like, okay, we've dealt with the hard stuff. Or excuse me, reverse. We've dealt with the easy stuff. Now we're going to start dealing with the more difficult problems, the things that require a little bit more nuance and subtlety, and or require a more complex solution than just showing up and saying, hey, stop hating each other. Because let's be honest, while I love the map episodes for the most part, most of the solutions have been pretty basic. Now, do I think the map is sentient? No. Do I think the tree is sentient? No. But we'll get more into that in the finale of this season, and possibly in Season 8 or 9, I don't actually know. So that's my first point. The second point is it sends someone who is not one of the main six, aka the ponies who are directly tied into the very creation of the map. Now, this probably couldn't have even happened before Starlight messed with it, and the fact that it sends Starlight makes perfect sense because she's the one who messed with it. Of the various beings who are connected to the map, there are in fact 7. The main 6 and Starlight, because of the time travel shenanigans of her thing back in, I guess that would have been Season 5 at this point, at the end of Season 5. So that makes perfect sense, and I'm totally with it. This then gets to some wonderful little character tidbits. Now, I'm going to go ahead and admit there's a lot of good characterization in this episode. Twilight is not on that list, if I might be so bold. Now, she gets a relatively small amount of screen time, so it doesn't bother me that much. But Twilight is exaggerated in this episode, let's just be honest about that. Let's just admit that they take Twilight and go a little bit too with her. just a bit too much, you know? It is a nice little tidbit where Starlight's like, well, I wasn't nervous before, but now... This then leads to Celestia and Luna obviously being troubled. This is ruddy brilliant right here. Yes, ruddy and bloody at the same time. It's bruddy brilliant. It's a new word. You can take it. First of all, Luna's discontent at the situation is obvious. Luna is just, ugh, the whole time. Ugh. 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 And so it's really overt. Celestia, by contrast, is like, nothing's wrong, right? Of course nothing's wrong. Everything's cool. However, if you're paying attention for less than 1 second, while she's looking at Luna, she glares. And then she goes right back to smiling. Because, of course, Celestia is far more practiced at hiding her real feelings and putting on a smile. Whereas Luna has no practice in that whatsoever. That's going to be a theme the whole episode. In fact, it comes up as a very obvious and overt point. But I wanted to point out that even in the cold open, they were still indicating and implying that connection. So, Twilight music box. Quick aside. There's a scene where Starlight is walking into the room and then plops down, and then you hear Twilight go, psst, psst. Starlight's like, huh? And then you see Twilight in the background. The thing that's interesting is, as she's on approach, the background layer of the drawing, basically the set of the drawing as Starlight's entering, actually has the little Twilight ballerina music box there. It's not moving because it's not on the animation layer, but it's there, and I just wanted to point that out. So anywho, oh yeah, absolutely, Lord Aramon. So Twilight now apparently has invented Zoom. Okay, maybe I'm just the kind of person who thinks in terms of technological progress, but this is actually a huge deal, which will probably never be touched on again. She has invented long-distance, two-way audio-visual communication. I say invented. She has presented... whatever. Anyways, was Zoom a thing in 2017? I mean, visual communication was a thing back then. I say Zoom because more of you are probably familiar with Zoom nowadays. I could have said Skype, but most people nowadays use Skype as a joke. So... anyways... you know how some people say nothing's wrong, but there's definitely something wrong? No? Nice, nice. Back and forth there. Twilight freaks out. Now, okay, this does make sense for Twilight to freak out. I still think she's freaked out too much. I absolutely stand by that. However, I have a note here. I'm not even sure I should read this. Oh yeah, no, I noticed that. Stop it. Go. This is her mentor, Celestia. Obviously, she's biased at. And this is the rulers. Now, if something's up with your rulers... And I'm going to stop there. Because I don't want to drift into polemic territory. Anyways. So, pancakes. I don't like pancakes. But those pancakes look good. Like, those look legit. Apparently, Celestia enjoys baking. It's a small way to say, I care. Quick aside, Luna shows up, grabs the pineapple, just takes a bite, and goes to collapse into bed. I do like crepes, actually. I prefer waffles, if given a choice. I know exactly what it feels like to put effort into something and to have someone not give a reaction. How many of you know what that feels like? Like, you make something special and you're like, and there's like an anticipation as you're hoping that they're going to enjoy it, and they don't even respond to it. Or they just say, oh, thanks. And it's just a nothing thing. I hate that feeling. I hate that feeling so much. A few weeks ago, this is a bit ago, this is actually in May, sorry. In May, I bought my niece a little set of magnets. And these were magnets that were stylized and done. They're of different colors and different shapes. And they were built so you can build things. Basically, think Legos, but with magnets instead of the latching on part, right? That kind of a thing. I thought it would be something she'd like. She's very artistic. She loves building and creating. And I figured she'd be into it. She opened her package and was like, oh, okay. And then immediately moved on and didn't react to it whatsoever. How do you think I felt? Now, hang on. This actually does have a good ending. I've actually shared this story before. Some of you may know this. Because I wasn't fuming. I was hurt. The very next morning, I got a picture from my sister. It was a picture. I actually still have it. It was a picture of the dining room table, which had this big old building that she had built out of the magnets. Because the first thing my niece did when she got up was she eagerly ran downstairs and started playing with the new toy her uncle had bought her. Now that's heartwarming for two reasons. Number one, because obviously my niece really did like the gift, and she did. Even when I came to visit the next week, she even said, hey, did you see the thing I made? The second reason that it was really heartwarming was because my sister knew me well enough to know how much that was bothering me. And specifically went out of her way to send me that picture to be like, no, don't worry, she's just a kid. She doesn't know how to express gratitude yet. And, I mean, that is a very common thing with children. Most children do not have the emotional depth or experience to even understand such a concept. And that's just human existence. The catch is, some people never learn that, and those people need to be educated. Anyways, moving on. So, I just wanted to share that, because when the pancakes were not eaten, and she's just like, Celestia's like, hey, pancakes! And Luna's just like, that just hit in a very personal way. And like I said, that happened just back in May, is the most recent incident for that for me. Anyways, so, the pattern continues. Luna is exhausted, can barely communicate, and is just, whatever. Leave me alone. Walks off. Celestia is still smiling and showing no frustration in her face, but she stabs her pancakes. Like she's still... And you could just see... The animation is brilliant because they get across all of the frustration in the way that she jabs... I think it's like a knife and fork. I'm not sure. It's two utensils. Right down into her own pancakes. Like, okay, whatever. Just a quick vent, you know? Just venting there. All right. We're good. Still smiling. This leads to Starlight deducing that Luna may be hurting her feelings without meaning to, also known as human existence. Now, I hate to give more credence to a character that I both love and relate to entirely too much, but you notice how Starlight insists on getting all the facts before taking action. Which, I, I don't know if that's really in character for her or not, but I like to think that's her developing as a character. That she doesn't want to just jump into things, which is kind of how she tends to in the past. Just kind of, instead she's like, hang on. Getting better. And yeah, hanging around Twilight probably helps with that. This then leads to Luna, who puts out lavender to help people sleep peacefully. Side note, that actually made me laugh because lavender actually gives me a headache. It's really minor, but I'm not joking. Lavender will induce a headache within me. Credentia, Eric. Or credonomics? Would that be a good one? I like credonomics. I think I'm going to go with that one. So, I lost my train of thought. Where was I? So, Lavender could go to hell. Celestia's face. Now, this is another one of those subtle animation things I love. She's cavorting with the dignitaries, and if you just closed your eyes, you would hear her be like, "Oh, you're such a cat, partying, haha." And basically, you see exactly what Luna's seeing. If, however, you are actually watching the episode, watch Celestia's face. Wonderful subtlety in the animation. I'm not even sure they could have done this kind of animation back in the earlier seasons to show how she is clearly faking it. Like, there is a strain to her expression. You're such a cat. And there's just like this almost disdain. I don't know what other word to use there as she's doing it. Oh yeah, wonderful animation in the whole episode. So, this then leads to Starlight saying, instead of talking about it, they're just getting colder and more distant. This is Human Existence, Part 2. Seriously, how many issues in real life, on a personal level, could have been solved if people talked about it, rather than refusing to talk about it and getting colder and more distant? This is, of course, when Twilight says, and there's Celestia and Luna, so you can't just confront them. I'm actually going to bring that up in a little bit, but just remember that for me. This is probably, however, the biggest reason why it is Starlight who is here, and why we're getting into more complex solutions. Thanks to Starlight's isolation, not counting the last 2 years, she really doesn't have a lot of previous bias in the matter. And she's still a little bit in the too honest side of things. She's getting there, but she is still too honest. She's the kind of person who, I don't know, should have been in the previous episode instead of Applejack. In all honesty, watching this episode and analyzing this episode absolutely makes me think that Starlight should have been the character in the previous episode. Just saying. And it could have been about Applejack helping her to understand the difference between honesty and tact, and just, I mean, this has already kind of been a thing with Starlight. Anyways, moving on. Luna shows up, oi, and eats a banana peel. Small tidbit. Celestia and Luna both glare at Starlight equally when Starlight interrupts their little tuffle. And when they are called out on it, both immediately get defensive. This then leads to an argument. This is one of those rare moments where I wish I could just show you the episode on camera. I can't, because even doing something as absolutely innocuous as playing Earthbound while commentating over it, while having chat up on the side, was something that was enough to get me copywronged into oblivion. But I want you to really zoom in the camera on this scene. This is how you add layers to characters. Now, these are not fully three-dimensional characters yet, not really. But this shows hurt, upset, unappreciated, stubbornly insisting nothing's wrong, refusing to talk about it, and by the time... Now, this is another key point. They're so stuck in this pattern of feeling hurt, feeling underappreciated, and stubbornly refusing to talk about it, that by the time it actually is brought up, you're too emotionally invested to talk about it. All you can do at this point is yell about it. Human Existence, Part 3. So, Like I said, this is officially how you showcase two-dimensional characters. Also, while we're on the topic, both don't appreciate the work, effort, and passion the other puts into their things. Huh, that sounds familiar because that was the topic of the last episode. Anyways, I'm just saying. So then Starlight tries to get involved, and Luna literally grabs her and shoves her out of the way. Shunk! This leads to Starlight freaking out. Starlight is A, powerful, probably one of the most powerful non-alicorns we've seen on the show. B, empowers her magic further via emotion, in this case fear. And C, is well-versed in cutie mark magic in particular. So I only mention this because I'm showing my work to showcase that I absolutely, with 100% certainty, believe that Starlight could do what she does here, especially in the moment. I do want you to pay attention to her expression, though, because she does it and then freaks out. First thing, oh God, what have I done? She doesn't say that, but her face expresses this. So, this is when I bring up the Twilight thing I mentioned earlier, and why Starlight was the right pick for her, other than the hammer thing, as Trihexie has pointed out twice now, I think 3 times actually. Luna and Celestia both have I don't have a better way to call this, a royal attitude about them. They presume an atmosphere that dictates that they are above reproach. When they are questioned or challenged, their response is to slam down hard. Now, this is not the first time we've seen that, but that is all over the place in this episode, and both of them do it. I bring that up because I feel like some of the attitude that Twilight, you can't go against the princesses, is because of that. This is also a very human thing. If you are a very powerful person who is in a position of authority, even if you are not evil, or even if you are not egotistical, it is natural for arrogance to kind of just drift into the equation. It's hard for it not to, simply by virtue of the fact that you are right and you are powerful and you are in charge. Now, forgive me, this is something that's very recent on my mind because this is actually a major plot point of World of Warcraft, the Pandaria expansion. And so I actually literally voice acted a section talking about this morning. So forgive me. Nevertheless, I point this out because this does help to explain a little bit the attitude and why someone who is disconnected from that, let's call it the royal culture, like Starlight, is someone who would be well suited to be able to actually call them to task. Like Loner. Now, it looks like, hey, the thing's back. I'm getting notifications again. I didn't even do anything. Sorry, I need to act like I'm an IT person. Yes, it took me 23 hours of ticketed work, but I did manage to successfully fix the issue. I'm gonna go ahead and bill it under tier 2 work, if that's okay. Thank you very much, Loner. Ever and always appreciate. Yes, it was. If it wasn't for you, Loner, I'm gonna write down the specifics of that in a minute. But I do have the comment right here. I just don't want to lose my track of that. But I have it. I won't forget. So this. So Ogre points out that Starlight is freaking out because magic is her greatest sin. Don't agree with that. But it does make perfect sense that she's freaking out in general. Because even if you remove magic from the equation and she just did something, and it doesn't matter what the something is, the freakout still has every reason to be there. Because of the word uncertainty. She doesn't know what she's doing is right, and Twilight's not helping with that. And so she's freaking out because, oh God, I may have just made things worse. I'm going to skip ahead in my notes a little bit. Even when she's told by both Luna and Celestia that everything's fine and she did the right thing, Starlight's reaction to that is to be like, that's a nice way of saying that I came this close to screwing everything up forever. Even when she was successful, Starlight was still uncertain. And I do think that is a relevant aspect of her character, and something that I hope we will see more going forwards. Where am I? I've got a lot of notes on this one, forgive me. So, it takes both Luna and Celestia a long time to take to Starlight's idea of swapping places. It's also probably worth noting that they only do it because they have no choice. They are never actually fully convinced. They just go along with it because, well, might as well. Again, that whole royalty above reproach thing. Starlight, oh god, Starlight's expression. As she's just laying there on the bed, just as Twilight's freaking out on the Zoom call, on the music box Zoom call. I know I'm a bit biased, but allow me to say, I noticed that they both have to do a 24-hour workload. I'm a bit biased, but I do have to say, it is harder and more draining than it sounds to always have a face on. To always express yourself in a way. I've actually talked about this before, because while I am naturally expressive, I only do that around other people. Like, and I've talked about this, right? You know, when I'm by myself, I don't bother to gesticulate. I don't bother to vary my tone or my pattern. I don't bother to do anything to try and present myself, because I don't have to. This takes energy. It's one of the reasons why I take a nap in the middle of the day of streaming for 10 hours. It's because those 5 hours are draining as hell. Celestia does that every day, and man, do I relate to that. But it's actually worse, which I'll talk about in just a second. This, of course, leads to Starlight. I really love the fact that she is actually terrified of what she's done, and that it was the wrong move. I know that sounds like a strange thing to mention, but I mention it because it is once again an aspect, at least I believe is an aspect, of actual honest-to-goodness character development. That she is someone who is, you know, learning and growing and trying to be like, as opposed to, you know, just being like, well, we're good. Immediate transition to Luna having to put on a face. Now, again, I just talked about that, but hang on. She scowls for 1 second. Because of her, the school won't go on a field trip. This is the nightmare state of being a true celebrity. Thankfully, I'm not actually all that big yet, and as a consequence, I don't have to worry about this as much. I actually talked about this all the way back in the Iron Man 2 rumination, some of you may or may not remember that, where I discussed what it must be like to be Tony Stark. The paradox of being someone who is that well-known, who is that venerated, who is that common of a public figure, to the point where you basically can't keep up, right? It's actually impossible. Now, I was actually just about to talk about that Dream Whisperer, if you'll forgive me for going into this. They're looking at me. How does scissors work? Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god. Yep. Hang on, where's my notes? I keep losing my place here. I have too many notes today. These things, these princesses, everything they do is scrutinized. To a stupid degree. I mean, honestly, look at real life and how much we overanalyze what actors and actresses are doing. They weren't smiling as they went... I've actually seen this in an article. They weren't smiling as they went down the carpet towards the premiere of such and such. This clearly indicates the actor has no faith in the movie, and you know we should. And people have taken that and ran with it. And it's like, Jesus Christ. I mean, I overanalyze things, but I usually do so within the bounds of fiction. And also, if I might be so bold, I also understand human society better than they do. But let's not go into that. Anyways, point being, I'm just saying that news media is terrible. Now, they're not even eating during Luna's brief break. Luna's just taking a moment to freak out. This is when Starlight unveils the rest of what Celestia has to do that day. If I might be so bold, I heard someone say once, this is a bit ago, that there should be less paperwork and bureaucracy in an idyllic land like Equestria. This actually wasn't in reference to MLP, it was in reference to another fiction, but the fact remains. Allow me to disagree with that professionally. In my opinion, there would be... Oh, I know, right, Trahexia? In my opinion, there would be more work to be done to upkeep that sucker. A true paradise, a mathematical perfection, is a whole separate thing. That's not what this is. This is a society which requires upkeep. In the moral morass of reality, you need to work at that stuff, and you need to work at that constantly, and you need lots of people doing lots of things to keep the balance, right? So absolutely, this is what I was talking about with regards to Dream Whisper earlier. Absolutely, Celestia has a huge amount of work to do all the time. Even if a lot of what she does is of the figurehead status, she is a baseline. The actual organizers, the actual leaders, the actual pushers, the actual movers, the actual bureaucracy all tilts on her because she's the groundwork. She's the foundation, right? And I want you to imagine that for a second. I want you to imagine being the baseline, the foundation for a society. I want you to imagine that everything you do is ultra scrutinized so that education and economics and military and holidays and policies and foreign interactions are all things that people decide based on how you were tilting your head that day, or your tone when you reacted to this particular dignitary, or how much you were perceived to be in favor of a particular event that you were present at, to use the specific examples here. Does that sound like fun? Yeah, Luna not only does her work in isolation, she does her work on her own schedule. This actually is a whole topic in its own right I'm not going to discuss right now. In short, some people work better when they can just take their time with something, and some people are better at working when they don't have time to make something working, right? Luna is clearly the kind of person who, and there's no judgment here, by the way, is the kind of person who will be like, and she'll just take her time, process for a moment, maybe roam over here, think about this. And Luna, of course, can't stop fixating on the one big mistake she makes. I have to fix this. Starlight, you can't. You have to put on a brave face and fix these issues. Time management and prioritizing incidents. Yep. Also, she resorts to the Royal Canterlot voice because she's so distraught. And the meeting only took 3 hours. Mood. So, to be completely honest, I have actually assumed, and this episode, in my opinion, codifies it, that Celestia was not doing the duties of the dream world while Luna was gone. And I can explain why in 2 simple things. First of all, this episode makes it clear that she's not used to it and has no idea what the job is like. Like, she treats it like it's some easy, simple thing with a clear ignorance, aka lack of experience. The second reason I say that is because she doesn't have Luna's powers. So she could raise the moon, but that's telekinesis. That's just the power to raise the sun and raise the moon and blah, blah, blah. She doesn't actually have the magic of the dream world. So in my opinion, what probably happened for a millennia is no one was managing the dream realm. So, because this is sequential, Celestia, naturally, gets to gloat a little bit first. And talks to herself. A lot. Immediate signs that she doesn't take solitude all that well. This is the extrovert thing that was just mentioned a moment there. No, Mr. Red, to both. No offense, dude. You're not Kuja. I'll think about another role. This is actually funny. Because this... But yeah, Ogre, wouldn't you? Yeah, Starlight passes out instantly. She's been up for a little bit. You'll notice that her initial motivation for entering the dream realm is entirely the fact that she wants to interact with someone, not doing her job in the dream realm. This also lends further credence to what I just said, because it indicates just how inexperienced she is with the nature of how the dream realm works. It should probably also be worth mentioning that while in real life dreams are something we're still debating and studying to this very day, in Celestia, in Equestria, I keep screwing those up in my head. In Equestria, it is far more likely that dreams have a little bit more, for lack of a better way to put it, tangible impact. more of a actual real impact on people's psyche and hearts and feelings and thoughts and etc. It is worth... Of course I did, S.A. Ross. It is also worth noting that even in real life, dreams can have a significant impact on someone. But I'll come into that in just a moment. For now, they have a bunch of dreams go by. I'm not going to comment on all of them. Discord was having fun with the schmooze. Daring Do was there. Flim and Flam were swimming in money. Derpy had the Twilight Scepter, I forget the name of it, and a crown, and a cape, and a throne. Here's a question for you. In the Dreamverse, there was a bit where Cadence was dancing to Flurry Heart, the Twilight game, thank you, to Flurry Heart, who was doing a DJ thing. Whose dream is that? Flurry Heart's or Cadence's? Anyways. Shining armors. But I do think that deserves a continuity counter right there. And so it shall receive one. Oof. For the dreams. Where am I at? So, dream. This then leads to a showcase of how many issues Starlight is having, because she is having a full-on nightmare about how she is screwed up and messed up and this is horrible and everything's gone wrong and I'm going to make everything horrible forever. Now, what's interesting is this is a dream, but as Luna later elucidates upon, this still has actual tangible threat and danger, because in Equestria, that kind of a dream can have a significant impact on her psyche. It's on every stream, Cecily. Every stream I do has that up, because I don't feel like changing it per thing. I play everything from Grand Theft Auto to Shantae. I don't feel like changing it every game. Anyways. Suicide. Anyways, so. This then leads to Nightmare Moon showing up, who is immediately overshadowed by Daybreaker. This is when I mentioned Nicole Oliver, who has done some great villainous voices in the past, and does an absolutely wonderful job as Daybreaker here. Yeah, we finally see the Celestia version of Nightmare Moon. A lot more hammy. I mean, both of them are hammy. What's interesting about this, she says, deep inside, you know how powerful you are. Suicide, according to YouTube Ogre, the mere existence of the word suicide means that something is not kid-friendly. Ergo, if there is a YouTube video with the word suicide in it, then that is a video that is automatically flagged as not child-friendly. Now, there's other stuff that goes into that. Forgive me for not going into the full details. It's related to the COPA thing, or the COPPA thing, if you remember that. Yeah, we tend to work the word suicide into these things. We've actually legitimately discussed suicide on this show, but I digress. Notice that this almost immediately shifts away from Starlight to Celestia, and Daybreaker almost totally ignores Starlight. That's relevant because this is Starlight's dream, which may or may not be impacted by the magic that Celestia is bringing to this by virtue of not really being fully familiar with dream magic and not really knowing how to use it. Now, put bluntly, I think that a little bit of Celestia is bleeding into this dream, and that is why Daybreaker not only is present, but is also as accurate as she is. Let me say this a little bit more simply. It could be, because both of these are possible. It's either possible that this is just Starlight's dream, and so Daybreaker is entirely an invention of Starlight, or, thanks to Celestia's inexperience with dream magic and her direct interference with the dream, Celestia has basically manifested Daybreaker, and that, for all intents and purposes, is her shadow. That is what she would be like if she was to lose herself like that. I prefer the second option. I headcanon the second option, but both are valid. Either way, there's a lot of implication about Celestia if we assume the second. And we have to assume the second because if it's the former, none of this matters. But if it's the latter, this implies a lot about how much Celestia holds back. This implies a lot about how much Celestia can't let herself go. This implies a lot about Celestia's fear. And how much I don't want to go full tilt into the world of cardboard speech, but drifting in that direction, you know? This is why Celestia loses fights. There's even a line Daybreaker says, you can have what you want, all you have to do is get rid of the people in your way. How much do you think Celestia thinks that thought on a daily basis? This would be so much simpler if I just did it and got the people out of my way. Not even in an evil manner, mind you. And yeah, this is when I once again bring up that whole royal attitude thing. Celestia is in over her head and runs off to Luna, who's having her own nightmare. Of course, she still can't let go of the fact that she let those kids down. That, if I might be so bold, says a lot about Luna. Now, we already knew this. We've actually seen this as far back as Luna's first episode, which was the Halloween episode. I forget what it was called. Way back in like season 1 or 2. But we have seen this aspect of Luna for quite some time. Luna Eclipsed, thank you. One of my favorite episodes, actually, even despite how old it is. I gotta throw something in here really quick, because her teeth start falling out. Now, dream science is not an exact science, but if you look up what does teeth falling out mean, the most common answer you will get is loss of control. So... And that's true, we did Trihexia, you're right. This then cuts to Starlight, who is sobbing. Luna, the expert on dream magic, immediately realizes that this type of a nightmare... yeah, no kidding, Raven. This type of a nightmare can have a significant offense on someone's psyche. This is when she brings that up. Again, how valid this is the realm of debate. We've seen the dream realm several times in MLP, but we sadly don't really know a lot about how much it actually functions, how it works, how it impacts things, etc., etc. Nevertheless, as I said before, even a real-life substantial dream can certainly have a big impact on you. So I'm inclined to believe Luna in this case. This then leads to Celestia breaking down, and a legitimately heartwarming moment between the two sisters as they reconcile in the moment, because that's usually when those kind of things happen. And then Celestia says a line I wrote down. You are not real, and you will never exist again. I could take that a lot of different ways. Now, I'm not sure I think there ever was a Daybreaker. I think this is something a little bit different, a little bit more nuanced than that. I think that Celestia has always been afraid of being Daybreaker. And so that fear has been sitting in the back of her mind for a long time. Probably over a millennia, because, as was pointed out by Trihexia just a bit ago, even when she fought her sister, Luna, all the way back in the day, she didn't really. Yeah, exactly, Ogre. I think this is not exactly a new thing. I don't think this is the first time Celestia has seen Daybreaker. And so her testament on this is that Daybreaker will never be allowed to be a part of her fear again. My opinion. There's a lot of other ways you can take that, of course, like I just mentioned. It is possible there was actually a Daybreaker at one point in time. It is possible that she is just trying to do this for Starlight's sake, aka get rid of the uncertainty and hesitation that Starlight is feeling, etc., etc. Yeah, no kidding, Sodacom. Do I think Nightmare Moon is still in Luna's mind? I think at this point she's moved past that. But we've already had the Tantibus episode, and that's why I think that. If I might be so bold, I would probably have this still be a thing that bothers Luna, but a lot less so. Until it gets to the point where she is actually past it. But you know me and my recurring subplots. Now, this leads to Luna, who is not a baker, making absolutely terrible pancakes. They look pretty bad. You ever had goopy pancakes before? I have. Ugh. Just, ugh. But, you know, it's okay. These are terrible, but it means a lot that you tried. Oh, that sounds a lot like the last episode. Huh. It's almost like... Not as bad as Pinkie Pie. Oh my gosh. This is when I point out what I've already said, that even though Starlight won and is told that she did right, she is still afraid that she almost messed up. And of course, the cutie marks revert without Starlight doing anything, because the map senses that things have concluded, and the map is cutie mark magic incarnate. So... this then leads to Twilight twilighting. Twilight. Chillax. Go find Rainbow. Take a lesson. And chillaxing. I don't think so, Trihexia, personally. I don't think it could happen, is what I mean. The Tantabus was kind of a unique situation, and built by someone who specifically had dream magic, as opposed to, you know, that. Yeah, I got your... yeah, she had Spike's toothbrush, so she would have an excuse. She had to have an excuse so she could show up. I'm not here, now tell me everything. After the moment I passed out. Twilight. Twilight. In all sincerity, and I've already said this, if Twilight had more screen time like this, it would actually irritate me. As is, it's just a nice little gag. Like, imagine if the whole episode was Twilight freaking out to that extent. That would get grating. So now we have to rate this terrible episode. Now I'm thinking blue, maybe dark blue. Maybe I need to find my list of ratings. There we are. This is by Joanna Lewis and Christine Songko, and as we've mentioned before, the two of them have had a hell of a career of doing bad, good, and great episodes, so they're just all over the place. Oh yeah, and then Luna is like, oh, by the way, the school thing and the Timberwolves thing, bye. And Celestia's like, what? I don't think she started spying Trihexia. I think she just started... What I picture is that Twilight was freaking out and doing that thing where she's like, I'm not going to intervene, I'm not going to intervene. And she basically just psyched herself up, or down if you prefer, until she couldn't take it anymore. And that's when she finally was like, screw it, I'm just going to show up. I've got an excuse. She forgot her water bottle. I've got your water bottle. Here you go. Here you go. Water bottle. Okay. Now tell me everything. That's my take on it. Like, I can picture Twilight in the background just... while Morrowind music plays, of course. I'm seeing some interesting reactions in chat. But I see, it looks like several of you agree with me. Not all of you. I wasn't expecting this to be purple, but I do think it has a little bit of extra oomph that shoves it into purple. It's absolutely red. This is a great episode. There's some good world building. There's some great character development. There is some excellent animation. There is some good story construction. There is some actual parts of arcs for both Starlight and the princesses. Yeah, this is easily a safe red, I agree. I do think, however, that extra little oomph of the relatability, as well as the very, very, very human conflict in this episode, pushes it above to purple, my opinion. I also have to admit, and I do have to admit this, I'm a little bit biased, because this episode absolutely succeeds in pretty much every way the previous one failed. Nevertheless, I do still think this is an absolute excellent episode, regardless of the previous, so I don't think that is really a factor. So, believe it or not, this also means this is our first purple from Joanna Lewis and Christine Songko. So, congrats. And when was our last purple? I don't keep track like that. I will eventually. I'm going to organize it. I think our last purple was to wear and back again, though. Sorry, Ogre. We had a bit of a short lore week, that's why. Like I said, I don't really have a schedule for the Streaminations. They just happen whenever lore week finishes, and there's no real fixing that. Yeah, no. Looks like that is it. To wear and back again was our last purple. I'm going to organize this into different ways later. Right now I haven't bothered because I haven't had the time. I'm going to chop off the local recording.